The Turners moved to Willow Creek in late spring, chasing peace after years of storms. Jake Turner, a Navy SEAL who'd spent half his life in sand and shadows, had promised his wife Emily that he was done with danger. They bought a pale blue house on the corner, white fence, oak tree, and a porch swing she'd dreamed of since college. It was supposed to be their safe haven, a place to breathe. For a while it was perfect. Neighbors smiled, kids rode bikes, and the air smelled of cut grass and weekend barbecues. But soon Jake noticed the odd glances, the too long stares from a few men wearing Navy shirts with HOA security stitched across the chest. They carried radios and badges that looked official, but something about them was wrong. Their leader, Greg Hansen, a thick-necked man with mirrored sunglasses, strutted through the neighborhood like a sheriff in his own town. At first, Emily laughed it off. Just local busybodies, she'd said, waving away her husband's concern. She tended her roses, baked for neighbors, and tried to fit in. But the HOA cops, as people called them, had rules, ridiculous, petty, and enforced with bullying smiles. The trash cans had to face east, lawns couldn't be 2 inches too long. Fines arrived like threats stuffed in envelopes. When Jake left for a 3-day veterans support conference, Greg's visits became bolder. He inspected their fence, checked her recycling bins, and lingered too long near the porch. Emily told him politely to leave, but he only grinned, saying, "We make the rules here, Mrs. Turner." That Friday afternoon, under a hot sun, Greg and 2 of his cronies marched into the yard, claiming her mailbox was non-compliant. When she refused to let them inside the gate, Greg's mask of authority cracked. His voice rose, and before she could back away, his hand lashed out, sharp, sudden, cruel. The sound echoed through the street like thunder. Emily stumbled, tears stinging her eyes. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, but no one came out. Greg sneered, muttering something about learning respect, and walked away. As she sat on the porch, shaking, one thought cut through her pain: Jake would find out. And when he did, peace in Willow Creek would end. Jake returned home 3 days later, carrying the kind of tired peace that comes from talking to other soldiers who understood the darkness he'd left behind. He was smiling when he walked through the door, until he saw Emily's face. The bruise was faint, hidden under makeup, but he noticed instantly. Years of training had sharpened his instincts beyond reason. He froze, eyes narrowing. He said quietly. "What happened?" She tried to smile. "It's nothing. I tripped in the garden." But her voice cracked, and that was all it took. He set his bag down, and took her trembling hands in his. "Don't lie to me, please." The story spilled out between sobs, Greg, the fake HOA cops, the slap, the neighbors who turned away. Jake listened in silence, jaw tightening until his teeth hurt. When she finished, his voice was calm but cold. "You called the police?" She nodded. "They came, but Greg showed them papers, some kind of private security contract. They said it was a civil matter, not assault." Jake's eyes darkened. The man who desurvived war zones felt a different kind of fury now, the kind that burned slow and deep. He walked out to the porch, staring at the street, breathing through the anger that threatened to consume him. Emily followed, her voice shaking. "Please don't do anything crazy, Jake. I just want us to be safe." He turned to her, his expression softening. "Safe," he repeated, the word like a vow. "That's exactly what I'm going to make us." That night, after she fell asleep, Jake went to the garage. He stood before a locked steel trunk, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside lay fragments of another life. His SEAL insignia, tactical gloves, desert camo, and a weathered patch that read "Never out of the fight." He traced the words with his thumb, remembering every oath he'd ever sworn to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. This time, the mission wasn't overseas, it was home. In the dim light, he whispered, "You touched the wrong woman, Greg." Then he closed the trunk, not to hide it, but to plan. The quiet suburban streets of Willow Creek were about to learn what justice truly looked like. Days passed, but Jake's calm exterior hit a storm. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, he simply watched. Every evening, he sat on the porch, quiet as stone, while Emily watered her roses. The HOA cops drove by, smirking, still puffed up with fake authority, but Jake wasn't the same man they'd met before. He was studying them, their roots, their routines, their weaknesses. He noticed that Greg always circled the neighborhood at dusk, stopping near the park for a cigarette. The others, Tom and Reed, met twice a week at the HOA office, a converted garage behind Greg's house. They thought no one was paying attention. They were wrong. By the third night, Jake had hacked into the HOA's open radio frequency, listening to their petty power trips. What he heard made his blood run colder. They'd done this before. Greg bragged about keeping wives in line, about fines that were never recorded but paid in cash. It wasn't just harassment, it was organized extortion. When Jake shared what he found, Emily's hands shook as she scrolled through the recordings. "We can go to the police again," she said, though she didn't sound convinced. Jake shook his head. "Not yet. First we make sure they can't hide." Together they set up small cameras along the fence and a hidden mic under the porch rail. Emily, terrified but resolute, played her part, pretending to ignore Greg when he showed up again, letting his arrogance dig his own grave. Every insult, every threat, Every illegal fine was captured in perfect detail, but Jake wanted more than proof. He wanted them to understand fear, the same helpless fear they'd given his wife. So, one evening, when the fake cops tried to storm their yard again, Jake was waiting. Greg's grin vanished when Jake stepped out, silent and steady, his presence radiating danger. "Evening, boys," Jake said calmly. "You wanted to play police. Let's see how you handle an interrogation." What followed wasn't chaos, it was precision. Jake disarmed Reed in 2 seconds flat, dropped Tom to his knees with a joint lock, and pinned Greg against his own car. He leaned close, his voice low, deadly calm. "You call yourselves cops," he whispered. "But tonight, you met a soldier." The streetlights of Willow Creek flickered over a scene no one would forget. Greg and his cronies lay groaning on the pavement, their fake badges scattered like fallen leaves. Jake stood above them, steady, breathing slow, the embodiment of calm after the storm. He hadn't killed them. He didn't need to. The lesson was written across their broken pride in trembling hands. "Next time you raise a hand to someone weaker," Jake said, his voice low but commanding, "remember how it felt when someone stronger didn't?" Greg spat blood and muttered something about calling the police. Jake smiled faintly. "Good," he said. "I already did." When the squad cars arrived minutes later, flashing lights painting the night red and blue, the truth began to unravel. The real police found fake security IDs, counterfeit citations, and stacks of cash inside the HOA office. Jake handed them a USB drive recordings Emily had made of every threat, every lie, every abuse. The officers listened in stunned silence. Greg's bravado cracked completely when they cuffed him. "You set us up," he barked. Jake's reply was soft, almost kind. "No, Greg, you set yourself up. I just made sure the world could see it." The story exploded across local news within hours. Fake HOA. Security ring busted in Willow Creek. Reporters swarmed the quiet neighborhood that had once looked picture perfect. Residents who'd once turned away now stepped forward, confessing how Greg's crew had extorted them for years. Families spoke out, and the once feared HOA cops became a national embarrassment. Through it all, Jake stayed silent. He wasn't proud, just relieved. His only mission now was Emily. In the weeks that followed, peace slowly returned. The bruise on her face faded, replaced by something stronger, resilience. She planted new roses in the yard, soft pink ones, where Greg had once stood. Jake helped her, kneeling in the dirt beside her, his hands steady again for the first time in months. "You know," she said quietly, brushing soil from her fingers, "I thought I wanted revenge. But what I really wanted was for it to stop hurting." Jake looked at her, a faint smile in his eyes. "Then we did it right," he said. "We didn't just stop them, we stopped the fear." When the HOA finally reformed under honest leadership, neighbors gathered to thank Jake. Some called him a hero. Others whispered his name like a warning. But he didn't want glory, just quiet. The kind of quiet he and Emily had dreamed of. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the swing creaked softly, Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "They'll never forget you," she murmured. Jake smiled faintly, watching the horizon fade into peace. "They called it revenge," he said, his voice a whisper. "I call it balance." The wind carried the scent of roses through the yard, living proof that strength and love, when bound together, could turn even pain into something beautiful again.